There is a grey space between sleep and full consciousness, a biologically distinct phase where the brain is designed to drift, slowly reassembling the self, bridging the gap between the unconscious and the demands of the day. In a regulated system, this is a slow wade into deep water. The body temperature rises, cortisol pulses gently to wake the organs, and the mind retrieves its identity piece by piece. But for you, the transition is violent. Before the eyes have fully adjusted to the darkness of the room, the hand has already moved. It is a reflex faster than conscious thought. The thumb finds the sensor, the screen ignites, and the floodgates open. It happens before you have taken a deliberate breath, before you have checked in with your own body, before you have acknowledged the reality of the morning. This is not a habit, it is a physiological bypass. By flooding the visual cortex with artificial blue light, and the prefrontal cortex with urgent, fragmented information, you successfully skip the moment of waking up. You avoid the silence. You avoid the sensation of your own nervous system booting up in a vacuum. The brain is jolted from the slow, restorative delta waves of sleep directly into high beta alertness, skipping the necessary alpha bridge where emotional regulation occurs. For a few seconds, the digital input masks the underlying state of the body. It feels like orienting yourself in the world. It feels like necessary preparation. But the nervous system registers this as a threat response. You are not checking for messages, you are checking for a lifeline. You are ensuring that you do not have to spend a single second alone with the thoughts that accumulated while you slept. The screen is a shield, deployed instantly against the quiet. But the question remains, what specific internal danger is the silence holding that requires such an immediate, aggressive defense? To the outside observer, this behavior is catalogued under the umbrella of modern vices. It is labeled phone addiction. It is dismissed as a lack of discipline, a symptom of fear of missing out, or simply bad sleep hygiene. Articles and well-meaning peers suggest that you are merely chasing dopamine, caught in a feedback loop designed by engineers to hijack your attention. They see the glowing screen in the dark room and assume you are seeking entertainment, validation, or distraction. When a partner wakes up to find you already scrolling, the interpretation is often personal. They perceive it as a rejection of the present moment, a preference for the digital void over the intimacy of the morning. They see a choice being made, a conscious decision to prioritize the chaotic external world over the peace of the immediate environment. You are viewed as someone who cannot sit still, someone who is functionally incapable of being alone with their own thoughts. Even you likely misinterpret the impulse. You frame it as a habit you need to break, a weakness of will. You tell yourself you are just checking emails or waking up. You may even feel a low-level shame as the minutes tick by, aware that you are losing the most fertile part of the day to a passive activity. You try to force yourself to stop, to leave the phone in another room, treating the symptom as if it were the disease. But these labels, addiction, laziness, distraction, are fundamentally flawed because they assume the behavior is driven by desire. They assume you want what is on the screen. They assume you are scrolling because the content is compelling. This interpretation fails to account for the days when you scroll through nothing, reading the same headlines, refreshing empty inboxes, consuming content you do not enjoy and will not remember. If it is not pleasure, and if it is not information, then the transaction is much more costly. You are not paying with your attention, you are paying with your physiological baseline. When you inject high-urgency data into a waking mind, you effectively shatter the container of the day before it has been formed. The nervous system requires a gradual escalation of sensory input to calibrate its threat detection systems. By bypassing this, you force the amygdala to calibrate its baseline for normal to the level of global crisis. This results in a subtle, pervasive vibration that runs beneath the skin for the next 16 hours. It is not acute panic. It is a chronic, low-voltage hum of anticipation. You move through the morning routine with a sense of frantic efficiency, yet your cognitive grip feels slippery. You drop keys. You forget what you walked into a room for. This is not simple forgetfulness. It is the result of a working memory that was maxed out before your feet touched the floor. Because the brain was denied the transition from sleep to wakefulness, it remains stuck in a hybrid state of hypervigilance. You are biologically awake, but psychologically, you are still reacting to the dream logic where scenes shift instantly and threats are ambiguous. Throughout the day, this manifests as an inability to tolerate boredom. The moment external stimulation drops, the internal static rises, and the hand reaches for the phone again, not to see what is new, but to maintain the noise level that you established at 6 a.m. The true cost is metabolic. Maintaining this artificial state of high alert burns through glucose and neurotransmitters at an unsustainable rate. By early afternoon, you experience a specific type of hollow fatigue. It is not the clean, heavy tiredness that follows physical labour or deep concentration. It is the muddy, irritable exhaustion of a system that has been sprinting since the nanosecond consciousness returned. You feel brittle. Your patience thins. The world feels louder and more demanding than it actually is, because you are viewing it through a lens of sensory depletion. You assume this exhaustion is a failure of your stamina. You assume you are simply tired because life is stressful. But deep down, the system knows that this depletion is not a malfunction. The exhaustion is manufactured. It is being generated on purpose, because a tired, depleted mind is too weak to ask the questions that would arise in a state of full energy. To understand the ferocity of this reflex, we must look past the dopamine loops and examine the architecture of the resting brain. Specifically, we must look at the antagonism between two distinct neural systems, the default mode network and the task positive network. The default mode network comes online when you are doing nothing. It is the neurological seat of the self. It houses your autobiographical memory, your ruminations on the past, your anxieties about the future, and your self-referential thoughts. When you wake up, before the distraction of the day begins, the default mode network is naturally dominant. It is the state of pure being. For a regulated nervous system, this state is neutral or even creative. But for you, the default mode network has become a landscape of threat. The moment you wake, the body experiences the cortisol awakening response, a natural spike in stress hormones intended to mobilize you. When this chemical surge hits a mind that feels unsafe in its own quiet company, the result is a flash of shapeless existential dread. The self feels dangerous. The silence feels heavy with accusations or undefined panic. This is where the phone becomes a tool of surgical precision. Entering the digital world forces the brain to engage the task-positive network. This is the system used for processing external stimuli, solving problems, and navigating the environment. The critical biological rule here is that these two networks are anti-correlated. They function like a seesaw. When one goes up, the other must come down. You cannot be fully immersed in the default mode network and the task-positive network simultaneously. By flooding your visual field with text, images, and notifications, you force the task-positive network to ignite. This action instantly inhibits the default mode network. You are not checking your phone to see what is happening in the world. You are checking it to chemically suppress the self. The screen acts as a neurological kill switch for your own internal monologue. It is a highly effective, albeit desperate form of self-medication. You are inducing a state of attention to avoid a state of awareness. It is a survival strategy called experiential avoidance. You are choosing the mild stress of the news cycle or the irritation of an email over the raw, unregulated sensation of your own consciousness. The mechanism works perfectly. It successfully mutes the internal noise, but it leaves a disturbing variable in the equation. If the brain is willing to endure the chaos of the digital world just to escape the silence of the morning, what exactly is buried in that silence that the system is so terrified to meet? This is not a technology addiction. It is an intimacy disorder with the self. You have internalized a narrative that says you are weak, distractible, or enslaved by algorithms. You view the hand reaching for the phone as a sign of a corrupted attention span. But this is a misdiagnosis. The intensity of the reflex suggests something far more primitive. You are not drawn to the light of the screen. You are repelled by the dark of the mind. This is not a habit of consumption. It is a habit of anesthesia. You are effectively dosing yourself with information to prevent the surfacing of emotion. The person who checks their phone the second they wake up is not an information junkie. They are a fugitive. You are running from the split-second gap where you might have to feel the weight of your own existence without a filter. The device is merely the closest available exit door from your own psyche. If the phone were not there, you would find another way to fracture the silence. Radio, television, immediate physical activity. The specific medium is irrelevant. The function is displacement. You have constructed an identity that relies on external input to validate its own being, because the internal signal has become too frightening to tune into. You are not fighting a war against a device. You are maintaining a demilitarized zone between your conscious mind and your subconscious reality. The phone is simply the wall. And while this wall successfully keeps the monsters of the deep at bay, it also walls you off from the only part of yourself that is capable of genuine rest. You survive the morning, but you do so by severing the connection to the only person you cannot actually escape. Once the morning protocol is established, the mechanism does not simply deactivate. The neural pathway has been greased. Because you successfully avoided the initial confrontation with the self at 7 a.m., the brain learns that this strategy is viable. It then begins to export this behavior to every other transition point in your day. The morning scroll is merely the ignition of a combustion engine that will run until you lose consciousness at night. Consider the act of commuting. Whether you are driving, walking, or sitting on a train, the physical transition from one location to another creates a natural cognitive gap. In a historical context, this was a space for processing, for allowing the mind to wander and synthesize the events of the morning. For you, this gap is an emergency. You cannot leave your front door without the audio insulation of headphones or the distraction of a podcast. If you forget your headphones, you feel a spike of genuine anxiety, not because you love music, but because the rhythm of your own footsteps is too quiet. You require a superimposed narrative to walk through the world. You are outsourcing your internal monologue to a stranger's voice, ensuring that your own thoughts never get a chance to speak above a whisper. This pattern bleeds into the micro moments of social friction. When you are waiting for a friend at a restaurant and they are 2 minutes late, the hand moves to the pocket instantly. You cannot sit and observe the room. You cannot simply be a person waiting. To sit unoccupied is to risk the appearance of loneliness, or worse, to risk falling into the gap where the internal static becomes audible. The phone becomes a prop of purpose. It signals to the room, and to yourself, that you are connected, busy, and safe, even though your heart rate is slightly elevated by the social ambiguity. The mechanism invades your recovery time. You sit down to watch a movie or a series, an activity theoretically designed for relaxation. Yet within 10 minutes, the phone is in your hand. You are double screening. You are watching a narrative on the television while scrolling through unrelated data on the device. This is not multitasking. It is a regulation strategy. The movie requires emotional investment and passive reception. It allows the mind to drift. Drifting triggers the default mode network. To prevent this, you use the phone to inject quick, sharp spikes of task-positive engagement. You are titrating your attention to ensure you never sink deep enough into the story to forget your defenses, but never stay surface level enough to be bored. You exist in a suspended state of fractured attention, consuming 2 streams of media but absorbing neither. Even the most biological functions are not safe. The phone follows you into the bathroom. It sits on the counter while you shower, perhaps playing media over the sound of the water. These are the most private, vulnerable moments of human existence, moments where the body is naked and the mind is typically unguarded. By bringing the screen into these spaces, you are signaling a profound intolerance for physical solitude. You are unwilling to be alone with your own body for the 5 minutes it takes to wash it. The silence of the bathroom tile is deafening because it reflects the internal state too clearly. The cumulative effect is that you are living a life with no white space. You have stitched together a continuous tapestry of inputs, emails, podcasts, feeds, videos, music, to cover every single quiet moment where the self might accidentally emerge. You are not living a life. You are managing a broadcast. You have created a seamless, hermetically sealed reality where external noise is constant, ensuring that the internal voice remains effectively strangled. But if you look closely at the pattern, you realize the tragic irony. You are doing all of this work, expending all of this energy to avoid a confrontation that is already happening. You are running from a ghost that is riding in the passenger seat. The price of this strategy is paid in depth. By constantly engaging the task-positive network to inhibit the default mode network, you atrophy the muscles of self-reflection and emotional digestion. The brain is an efficient machine. It discards what it does not use. If you never allow yourself to drift, to be bored, or to endure silence, the neural pathways responsible for deep, integrative thinking begin to weaken. You lose the ability to understand why you feel what you feel. Emotions do not disappear just because you distract yourself from them. They are merely pushed into the somatic underground. They accumulate as tension in the jaw, tightness in the chest, and a persistent, undefined irritability. You become a stranger to your own inner landscape. When a major life event hits, a breakup, a failure, a grief, you find yourself completely unequipped to handle it because you have spent years practicing the art of looking away. You have no tools for the deep water because you have spent your life frantically treading in the shallows. Furthermore, this constant external tethering destroys your capacity for genuine anticipation. You never wonder what the day will bring. You check the weather app. You never wonder how a friend is doing. You check their story. You have traded the rich, unpredictable texture of lived experience for a flattened, predictable stream of data. You are informed, but you are not involved. You are connected to everyone, but intimate with no one, least of all yourself. This is the ultimate trade-off of the survival strategy. You successfully avoid the momentary discomfort of the morning silence. You successfully dodge the anxiety of the gap. But in exchange, you sacrifice the ability to feel fully alive. You become a processor of information rather than a vessel of experience. You are safe, shielded, and occupied. But you are also slowly, quietly becoming hollow. Tomorrow morning, the biological cycle will reset. The cortisol will pulse. Your eyes will open to the grey light of the room. The gap between sleep and full consciousness will open for a fraction of a second. The phone will be there, sitting on the nightstand, dark and dormant. You will almost certainly reach for it. This is not a prophecy of failure. It is a recognition of momentum. The neural groove is deep. The mechanism is efficient. To leave the hand still would require a tolerance for raw sensation that you have systematically dismantled. It would mean lying in the debris of your own dreams, feeling the temperature of the air, and listening to the rhythm of a heart you usually try to ignore. It is a terrifying proposition. You have forgotten how to simply exist without a task to perform or an input to process. So you will likely bypass it again. You will flood the cortex. You will numb the sting of being awake. You will successfully survive another morning transition without having to be fully present for it. The strategy works. It keeps the peace. But as the screen illuminates your face, casting blue light into the shadows, the victory is hollow. You are safe from the silence, but you are also exiled from it. The noise protects you, but it also starves you. The screen is bright. The feed is endless. But the question remains, suspended in the air long after you have scrolled past it. If you put the phone down, the silence will rush in. And in that silence, a version of you is waiting to speak. Are you finally ready to hear what they have to say?